Today is December 25th, and it's the first day of Tevet, the moon month. So if you go outside and you can actually find the moon, you'll see you can't see it. It's a very interesting thing, that every month, on the first day of the month, not only the Jewish month, or the Muslim month, same thing, you can see that there is no moon outside, regardless if you can see the sky clearly. Okay. So we're continuing what we started about Hanukkah on Friday, last time we met. And then we talked about 4 differences between the Hanukkah candles and the menorah in the temple. We said that the Hanukkah candles and the one are a memory, or a commemoration of the menorah that was lit in the temple, but they represent completely different states of life, of history. How are they different? That in the menorah there were always the same number of candles, seven candles every day. But in the Hanukkah candles you have to add one every night. That was the first difference. Second difference was that in the Beis Hamikdash, in the temple, the candles of the menorah were lit while it was still completely daylight. But Hanukkah candles can only be lit after sunset. Between sunset and nightfall. The third difference was that the menorah was inside the temple, inside the sanctuary, and through the windows it illuminated outwards. But the Hanukkah candles have to be outside. Now, this changed over the years, this thing that the Hanukkah candles are on the outside, but in principle they need to be outside. We have our reasons for lighting them inside.
But you can also light Hanukkah candles from Mincha Katana.
Good. So
you said you can only light them after Shkiyah, but we do sometimes.
In a shul you can. You can't do it at home. At home it has to be after sunset.
Friday we do it before sunset.
That's because we can't do it after sunset. So that's the only
Or if
exception.
you're going away, going on a journey, you've got some pressing need, you can light before.
Okay, if you have some pressing need, but then you have to make sure
You have enough oil
that
to
they
burn
can't,
for half
that
an
they
hour.
light until after until nightfall.
For half an
And
hour.
the fourth difference is that the menorah was obviously in a time when there was no lack. They had everything that they needed. There was nothing missing. And the Hanukkah candles, especially this was true when the menorah was made, when they were in the desert, in the wilderness. At that time they had everything that they needed. They had water from Miriam's well, and they had food from the manna that fell from the sky. They had everything they needed in general. But the Hanukkah candles, they are specifically the result of self-sacrifice that had to be performed in this time when the Hellenists and the Greeks were persecuting the Jews. Okay. So now says the Rebbe, Kol Havdalim Alalu, Yud Beit, the 12th chapter. Kol Havdalim Alalu Kshurim Ze Bazeh. All these differences, these 4 differences, they correspond to one another. כשהמצא טוב מבחינה גשמית משום כך גם מבחינה רוחנית כאמור שאין שיש לו ידיעו הוא נותן ביד פתוחה ורחבה לצורכים רוחניים אז אין צורך במלחמה מסירות נפש. It says when we are in a good place, when we have all that we need, we're affluent. And we said that affluence means that a person has not just what he needs, but that he feels that he has what he needs. It's not enough to have what you need, because sometimes the environment around you makes you feel that as much as you have, you don't have enough. So that is called the time of non-affluence. Even though physically somebody might argue you have everything you need, because it's saying that the environment that you're living in is hindering your Torah observance. It's doing something to you. It's messing with you in some way. We didn't mention the third miracle that happened in the wilderness is that they had the clouds of glory that surrounded them. The clouds of glory are basically something that every human being, every Jew can have in his life today. What does it mean to have clouds of glory? The clouds of glory separated them from the rest of the world. Separation doesn't necessarily mean that I don't know what's going on the outside, but it does mean that are not affected by the outside. So if on the outside there is this consumerism that is consuming everyone, and everyone always feels that if they don't go shopping, which was really just a way of alleviating their psychological angst. Right? Shopping is not because a person really needs something. They want to go and purchase something because the purchase itself, sort of like consuming food. Being a consumer, consuming what's in the store is a little bit like consuming food. Somebody who takes out a big barrel of ice cream from half a gallon or a gallon out of the freezer and starts eating it and can't stop. Why can't they stop? Because they feel that by eating they are consoling themselves in some way. They are helping their psychology in some way, which is true. It's really doing that. It's also killing them at the same time. So this consumerism is something that's impinging upon the person's being from the outside. So you need to have also clouds of glory, the third element that we didn't mention that they had in the wilderness, that protected them from the outside world. And when you're in that state, says the Rebbe, then there's no need for any kind of struggle or any kind of mesiras nefesh, any kind of self-sacrifice. All you need is to have, you do the same things every day. It's like in the menorah, 7 candles were lit every single day. It was always the same. There was no need to add. There was no need to go above and beyond. There was no need to increment. You also don't need to go out and light the outside. This is a very common mistake that people have. They say the worse the situation is, the more I should be secluding myself inside and worrying only about my self-preservation. The Rebbe's opinion was always that if the situation is bleak, the only way you can defend yourself is by going out and not defending but opposing, but attacking in a certain sense.
De-bleak.
Sorry?
De-bleak.
D what?
De-bleak.
What does that mean?
You said it's bleak. I said de-bleak.
De-bleak it, yeah. De-darken it.
Right.
Undarken it. That's the only way you can really fight in these situations. You can't let the fight, the struggle come into your home. You have to meet it outside already. So in situations like the situation in which the Maccabees found themselves, and the situation which we have today in this doubly dark exile that we have now, the only way is to actually go outside and light the surrounding world. לא רק בתקופה של מצב קשה, בזמן של מלחמות, שלא רק של מלחמות עם יוונים, אלא גם יהודים מתייוונים, שהיו יהודים שלא ראו צורך בבית המקדש בעצמאות, כי הם רצו להתבולל ביוונים. So, like we said, when there are Jews who are assimilating, you can't wait, you can't defend yourself against assimilation by saying, I will protect myself and my family. That doesn't work. You have to, according to the Rebbe, you have to go outside and help others. It's really the only way to fend. במצב כזה, קשה כזה, נתן הקדוש ברוך הוא את מצוות נר חנוכה, בזמן כזה דרושה מסירות נפש. That's when you need to have self-sacrifice. And it feels like self-sacrifice because you're not defending yourself. In such a time, לא די בהעלאת אור בבית. It's not enough to just kindle the light inside your home. שכן בחוץ שורר חושך, because on the outside it's dark. וחשכת הרחוב עלולה לחדור לבית. And eventually, the darkness in the street might penetrate your home. יש לכן להקדיש השתדלות להאיר את הרחוב. מדליקים אז את הנרות בשעת החושך וליד בטח הבית כדי להאיר את הרחוב. So you have to light the candles not just like in the temple where the menorah was lit inside, and if it had some influence on the outside that was very nice, but that wasn't where it was lit. The Hanukkah candles, which represent fighting the darkness on the outside, have to be lit on the outside because it is a time of struggle. לא די בכך שידליק אדם נרות על שולחן האוכל. It's not enough like on Shabbos, right? There's a machlokas, big machlokas. We talked about this once. Between Kabbalah and Nigle. Where do you put the Shabbos candles? Where do you light them? On the table where you eat, or next to the table where you eat? So, which is it?
We personally?
Yeah, what do you do?
Next to the table.
Next. So you go according to Nigla. According to Nigla, you put the candles next to, meaning according to the halacha, the legal side of the Torah, it says that you put the candles next to where you eat. But according to Kabbalah, you're supposed to put the candles on the table itself. One of the reasons that people don't do that, even in Chabad, is because
the kids don't come
because the kids knock them over and you don't want to burn the house down. But that's why we have these very what do you call them? Low candles, the ones. What do they call them? Like heating candles. They're very small, very low.
Tea candles.
Yeah, tea candles. So those don't knock over. So if you have a
I'd be
tray,
surprised if you try them.
well, no, the problem with them is that you can throw something on them, and it catches fire. Anyway, most people, even with kids, don't want to do that. So they put it on the table next to the dining table. But I've seen some big mukubalim that do that, regardless of how many children they have. It's amazing. And somehow it works. I guess when you're a real mikubal, everybody's very calm. There's no such thing as a child like throwing a napkin on the candles. I guess it just doesn't happen. In any case, so the Rebbe here says, according to Kabbalah, he says it's not enough to put the candles on your dining table or on your study table, the table that you write on. And then opening the door so that the light shines out. That's not enough. We should light the candles by the door post itself. You have to expend time and energy in lighting up the outside, the street. Like we said, it's not enough, like in the menorah, that every day it was the same number of candles. Rather, you have to keep adding more, because only in a time where everything is normal and you're protected can you just continue to do the same amount and hope to remain at the same level. But שכן אי אפשר לאדם להסתפק בכך שלא ירד מדרגתו ויעמוד עדיין באותו מצב כאתמול, אלא שעליו להתעלות מעלה מעלה. But in a time of strife, you have to be continually elevating yourself in order to even keep the level that you had yesterday. Otherwise, you'll lose even what you had yesterday. And that's a very big deal. So, the big example for this is when you're walking, you don't have to keep walking faster. It's okay, you walk at the same pace and you move along. Amazingly though, when you send a rocket ship into the out of the Earth's gravitational pull, so the higher you go, the faster you go. You have to keep going faster. Now, part of it is because the gravitational pull gets weaker, so with the same energy you're going faster. But part of it also is that it's an abnormal situation. You have to push harder all the time in order not to fall back into the Earth's gravitational pull. You have to keep pushing harder and harder. You have to keep accelerating. If you're not accelerating, you're actually falling backwards. Okay, so in conclusion, Sikum Advarim. So he says all these four differences between the menorah and the Hanukkah candles have to do with the situation that you find yourself in. When the situation is such that it is dark, there's great darkness upon the world, you cannot be influenced by this darkness. You can't be influenced in the sense of excited by it and feel overwhelmed by it. But rather, you should walk with self-sacrifice in order to illuminate the outside, the street, and to add every day more light until finally you reach a state in which there is pure olive oil that you can use. How do you do this? So we said there's 3 things you need to do. And you have to keep adding more light. You can't make do with what you had yesterday. That's the first thing. Secondly, and
that's only the mahadrin min mahadrin. Somebody
we'll
wants
talk
to
about
keep
this in
that
a moment.
halacha.
Right.
That's the same kind every day.
Right. We'll talk about this in a moment. It's very interesting. He addresses this in a moment. Secondly, you can't only illuminate inside your house. You can't only take care of your family. You have to address the environment. You have to address those that are around you. You have to invest time and energy in illuminating the outside. And the third thing is, everything has to be done with self-sacrifice. Meaning, it sort of goes without saying, because if you're in a state of just defending yourself, that's not self-sacrifice, because you're actually going about your business. When you're not adding more, you're going about your business. These things of adding more every night, adding another candle every night, which symbolizes doing more every day, and illuminating the outside rather than waiting for the darkness to penetrate in the inside and then fighting against it. These are things that require self-sacrifice, which means you're going to be giving up from your time to do this. That's always the thing that the Rebbe was always looking for, was for people to sacrifice their time, not just their energy, but their time. And how we talked about that many times to people, even scholars who were sitting and learning. He said to them, you're not greater than Mordechai, Mordechai the Jew in Shushan, in the time of Purim, that he went out and he gathered all the children together to say Tehillim. The head of the Sanhedrin, he doesn't have anything more important to do. He says, no, that's what he has to do. That's what it means to sacrifice. Sacrifice your position also. Should not be impressed, even with others look at him with scorn. And they say, this is not fitting for someone of your stature.
So important. How can you do such a thing?
Rather to act with self-sacrifice and do the mission that God has placed upon him. עליו לדעת שהוא שגריר של הקדוש ברוך הוא לחמם את הגשמיות שבחלקו בעולם עד שיאיר בו ובסביבתו. This is what is demanded from every Jew. He must know that he is an emissary from the Almighty to warm his environment, and not just the spiritual, even the physical. לחמם את הגשמיות שבחלקו בעולם, meaning the material around me should be warmer than it is. What do you mean that it's warmer? That it's ready to be used for something good. והאופן של ביצוע הדבר צריך להיות לא להסתפק במה שנעשה אתמול, כי אם להוסיף אור מדי יום, יש לדעת מה נעשה אתמול כדי לדעת כמה יש להוסיף היום. For that reason, we need to know what we did yesterday. We need to keep an accounting, so that we know that today we need to do a little bit more than what we did yesterday. If you don't know what you did yesterday, then you can't know what you are required to do today. You don't know what to add. The Rebbe was very big on journaling. And he was very big on people sending him a summation of what he had done. He wanted to know what he wanted to be briefed on what was going on, because that was how he planned. A lot of people can't stand this, because they're like, I don't want to be in the army. I don't want to live my normal life as if I'm in the army. Yeah, it's true. The people that were very close to the Rebbe felt like they weren't in an army. They didn't feel like they were naturally flowing with life. That was the last thing that the Rebbe was interested in. He was also always interested in people doing above and beyond what they think they can do. And he always thought that if you don't measure it, you can't improve it. It's a very interesting thing that this is a statement that was said by somebody in the 60s. I don't remember who it was. He was one of the first people to develop modern management theory. And one of the things that he did, he was a mathematician or something like that, and he said that what can be measured can be improved. So the Rebbe here is basically saying the same thing. If you don't know what you did yesterday, you don't know how to add to it. You imagine that you're adding to it, but you're not really adding anything. כשהולכים בדרך זו במסירות נפש לא להסתפק באור שבבית ולא להסתפק במה שנעשה אתמול, ישנה הבטחה כי בסופו של דבר יהיה אמנם כן ברחוב מתחיל להיות אור, והאור הולך גדל והולך עד שנמצא שמן טהור להדליק בבית המקדש. When a person really follows this path, these guidelines, and he does this, then he is promised that he will eventually see how the outside is transformed, how there will be more and more light outside, until eventually he will find what is called the pure olive oil to light in the temple. And the point here is that the world becomes pure enough that we can handle having a temple. Meaning right now the world is too dark still. A lot of people think that maybe what we need to do is just build the temple and that will illuminate the world. The Rebbe understands that the temple is not a solution to our problems. The temple is the result of what happens when you come to a state in which most of the problems are already solved. And we've talked about this many times, that the Rebbe sees redemption as the opportunity when it becomes possible to fulfill all the commandments. Today it's simply not possible. If you would build a temple, even if you would overcome the opposition that stands against it, you probably wouldn't be able to do the sacrifices because there's still so many elements missing. And the most important ingredient, in a certain sense, is the ashes from the red heifer. And you have to get one of the ones that was already done. So you have to find. We know that it's hidden somewhere. You just have to find it, as it were. So it's the same idea. When the world becomes pure enough, it will be found already. We will find it. We will know how to do it. And it's not that the temple by itself solves the problem. The temple is a part of the solution. It's a vehicle through which it becomes possible to perform all the commandments that are missing right now. So that's a state of completeness and wholeness and purity that comes about as a result of our trying to illuminate the outside. Okay, so now we finished that discourse, and we'll start a new one, and we'll finish it tomorrow. I guess this will be the end of Hanukkah. Today we just lit the eighth candle, so tomorrow's the last day.
And I have a good story for you.
Oh, so why don't you tell the story now? It's a good time.
Because then we won't go back to the Sichot.
Yeah, we'll go back.
So I went off the call.
Yeah.
There's a very famous story of, I believe it was the Rebbe Rashab, who was visited by his relative Rabbi Slonim from Eretz Yisrael. We told the Rebbe Rashab that he wasn't impressed with the Jews in Eretz Yisrael. Was it the Rebbe Rashab or the Rebbe Mamish?
They both had. Slonim was both of their relatives.
Yeah, but which was
He was in Hebron.
Yeah.
I don't
So he went back to Russia and he told the Rebbe that he wasn't so impressed. So the Rebbe told him a story. This is not the point of the story now. He told him a story about how there was a simple Jew who couldn't even daven. And the Rav used to write down for him every single day what to daven. And one day he came into town, he was a farmer, and he couldn't understand why the shops were closed. And the Rav said to him, "Days of fast." And he went hysterical. And you didn't tell me that I have to fast. So he said, "But it's nothing to do with you if this is a fast because there's been no rain." So the guy said, amazement, "What, you fast when it doesn't rain?" The Rav says, "Well, what do you do?" He says, "I just go outside and I say, Hashem, we need rain." He said, "Yeah, what happens then?" He said, "It starts raining." He says, "Would you like to try that?" Yeah. So he said, "Sure, why not?" So he walked into shore and he said, "Abba B'Shemayim, Tata, we need rain." And it started to pour with rain. So the Rebbe Morash of Rashab said, "See, you never know the substance, the amazing substance of Jews." So I'll tell you the story that happened in Maisa Shahoya on Thursday night when I was in my son's house for a birthday party of his twin daughters, their first birthday. At 10 o'clock at night I got a phone call to tell me that a person who was living close to my house in Ramot, opposite the big shul of Beit Sasha, had passed away. And his name was Herschel. He's a big, heavy guy. He was a little bit slow. I don't think it was a bit slow. And he had problems, keeping himself clean and tidy and
Hygiene.
yeah, not so great at relating to people, but a good guy, perfectly good guy. And somebody had arranged to have a cleaners go into his apartment to clean it up. And they came to the apartment, and the apartment was locked. And there was a very bad smell coming out of the apartment. So they called Hatzolah, they broke the door down. He had a key, but couldn't use his key, there was the key on the other side. They broke the door down, and they found her dead. And they called Hatzolah, and they called, what's the other name? Zaka. And they said there's nothing can be done, it's ice cold. And they guesstimated, he's been dead for 3 days. So now we've got to about 10, 11 o'clock at night. And his father passed away when he was very young. His brother was sick and passed away at a young age. He had another brother who got married but didn't have children and also passed away at a young age. Thus, she was the youngest, but he outlived them all. And his mother passed away about 10, 15 years ago. And she wanted him to live in Israel, so she bought an apartment, but she never gave it to him. Put it in the hands of an apotropos, what do you say that in English? A guardian. And they allowed him to live there, and they gave him $500 a month to live on, which wasn't very much. And he used to come to a couple of people for meals once in a while. He walked very slowly. He was, but nobody knew him. Absolutely nobody knew him or knew of him. He was like, a nobody. There were one or two people who took interest, like Avi Sidon arranged that his apartment should be clean. He had a neighbor downstairs who used to bring him food for Shabbos morning. On Friday nights, people would invite him out, either they would or they wouldn't, right? So now, you've got to do something about burying him. So, there were two people who were actively involved in trying to organize the burial. One was Avi Sidon, another was somebody called Yecheskel Gold, it doesn't matter who they are. But they asked me what should they do. So Gold wanted to phone a person by the name of Moshe Shmuel Deutsch, who's the head of Koil Chabad, the head of the Chevra Kedusha for Chabad. And Avi Sidon didn't know. So I said to Avi Sidon, phone Moshe Shmuel. There's no other answer. So he phoned Moshe Shmuel, and Moshe Shmuel said like this: keep out of it. It's nothing to do with you. You're just causing yourself problems. He said the police have to come by law, and they will examine the body, and when they're satisfied that it was a natural death, they will give a certificate to say that it can be buried, and then by law, the police have to notify the Chevra Kedusha of Yerushalayim, which is completely that kosher, and they will bury him, and B'tuach Leumi, by law, has to pay them. Says if you start, making a big out of that, you'll end up having to purchase for $50,000 a piece on Har or whatever it's called, Har Zaytim, and you'll just be in trouble because there's no one to pay for it. So I said to Avi Sidon, I know Moshe Shmuel for a long, long time. He's a real tzaddik, a genuine tzaddik. If he said that, just do exactly what he said. So in the end, it turned out exactly like Moshe Shmuel did. And at 1 o'clock, the Chevra Kedusha announced that they have the body and they're ready to make the Lavoya. 1 o'clock in the morning in Hanukkah on a freezing cold, wet night. And the Lavoya actually started at 1:45 in the morning. Now there's a guy that nobody knows, nobody's heard of, the middle of the night, last night of Hanukkah, who is going to come to the Lavoya? Who's going to come? And not only just come to Shamgar, he's then going to go to Har Zaytim, or wherever it was. They didn't bring Har Zaytim, they did Har Manufas, right? Go to Har Manufas. So if you get home by 4 o'clock in the morning, you've done pretty good. Yeah. So there'll be the Chevra Kedusha and the cat. There were 35 people came to the Lavoya.
How was that possible?
Every single neighbor in the whole building came out to go to the funeral. So you see, the amazing chesed of regular Jews. There was no, no rebbes, no admorim. There was nobody. 35 people went to the Har Menucha. We're not talking about who was it.
Shamgar.
Shamgar. Another good 10 or 50 people at Shamgar. Nobody knows where they came from. They were just regular, everyday people. They wanted to do a mitzvah for somebody they didn't know, and nobody was friendly with him, apart from one or two people a little bit close. But it wasn't, just shows you the amazing, deep neshamas, the people that you look at every day in the street, and you wouldn't dream. I personally am a Kohen, so boy, Hashem,
Didn't have to go.
I was Pator, and I was in Tel Aviv, so I was doubly Pator. But I can say, in all honesty, I doubt very much if they would phone me at 11:30 and said the Lavoy is taking place now in Shamgar. I doubt very much if I would have got up to go. And I was friendly with Ursula. He used to eat in my house. But it's a very hard, big. But then to go on to the house, it's unbelievable, totally unbelievable. So as the Rebbe Marash said, we don't know what's inside these Jewish neshamas.
Incredible story.
I think we should put that to them in Jewish. What do you think?
Yeah. It's an amazing story.
We'll finish this tomorrow.
Let's finish this.
Okay.
Right. So Yonatan Gordon wrote that it's from Peter Drucker. He's right. That's
What is?
what I said, that what can be measured.
I
can be
thought you said that story. I just told
Yeah.
you. Ask him to do the last
Okay.
story.
We'll start the next Sichot and finish it tomorrow. It's very nice Sichot. It's very short. And it's to the point, and we'll see the Mehadrin part.
Okay.
Why we don't, because like you said, in the Gemara, the regular halacha is that you can just light one candle every night.
Right.
That's more than enough.
The big question is, what happens if you only got 9 candles apart from 9 Shemeshim?
Again, if you only have 9 candles,
And you got 9 Shemeshim, right?
that's fine. You have one a day.
So you got one every day, but the second day you could actually light 2.
Mhm.
You could go to be, but then the next day you got to go back to
can't
1.
Go backwards.
Can't go back. There's no going back.